And a welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus here on July 5th. It's a happy 4th of July fireworks hangover, you might say. I'm sure many of you have been extremely busy blasting off as many fireworks as you can and truly enjoying a way to celebrate Independence Day. I'm your Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. I get to man the ship today along with our sound engineer, Addison. We've got our mascot, Cooper, in studio. He's keeping an eye on things for us to make sure that nothing gets out of hand. I don't think he'll be hitting the screaming goat button very often, but in case he does, look out, just in case. I wanted to warn you. And I have a guest co-host today, someone sitting in to help out for the afternoon as we talk a lot about farming and a bit about a bit about weather as well. And that would be Red Ranger. Can you hear me out there in the hinterlands of South Dakota?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon.
Excellent. All right, so do you want to give a little introduction of who you are and what's going on in South Dakota today?
So I am Southeast South Dakota. I am fifth generation farmer rancher and um, been through the ups and downs of the economy lately. Finally have a steady beef price to where it's a little more sustainable for some of these ranchers that have struggled with going throughout and different political issues and diseases and so forth. So that's a little bit of my background for now. And
Okay. We kind of have a lot of things to talk about just in what you said there. If we talk about beef prices, because here we are coming off of one of the greatest picnic holidays of the season and what that looks like from a producer standpoint versus what we see from a consumer standpoint. Additionally, we have a listener question today, 4-H and FFA. Someone is asking about the differences between those as the fair season has really started to kick off. And you mentioned animal diseases, Red Ranger. Well, one of the things that comes to mind is the fact that there are, in fact, just recent headlines about disease, and I'm not talking about bird flu, but happening other diseases. And above all, July is National Ice Cream Month, so we have great reason to celebrate. But before we get to all the headlines, we do call this show Weather and Ag in Focus. We do have the weather. Usually if I'm gone and Dean and Justin are in charge, they're a little leery about talking about ag headlines. So I guess it's my turn to hit the weather today. So for those of you who are out there enjoying a sunny, sunshiny day everywhere you can be, an isolated thunderstorm is possible later this afternoon and evening. Otherwise, expect partly cloudy to partly sunny with north to northwest winds between 5 to 15 miles an hour. This weekend looks like we'll have some scattered hit or miss showers and thunderstorms with more clouds than sun. Aw, everybody out on a pontoon just felt a little sad to hear that. And if you can dodge the showers throughout the days, it's going to look fairly nice. Next week, we'll see more rain and showers, but we're also going to see a warm up. Looking ahead, Monday, we're going to be well over 80. By late next week, 86 degrees. So, Red Ranger, you mentioned you're down in Southeast South Dakota. What's your weather and rainfall been like? Because we're hearing some horror stories out of that region. What do you know?
yeah, it's been a definite battle for my neighbors and just west of me, the one of the bigger Manual Creek is overflowed and took out numerous fences, but luckily, not the devastation that they had east of me or southeast of me, closer to Sioux City or even Sioux Falls. So it's still an ongoing battle where the rivers are still up and hopefully we've got a little drier pocket here in sight to where we can get stuff leveled out and
Well,
give Omaha some relief as well.
do you feel like your crop is behind it all? As you think about that area in the southern corner of South Dakota, eh, have you seen things stunted? Do you have enough heat units? How's your corn look? Because I think you might be aware that we have a project where we're custom farming 20 acres of corn here in the Red River Valley, just north of Glendon. And it's called Here We Grow. And our corn seems to be making up some time. We've could definitely take a few more warm days. But what's happening for you and your region and neighbors?
I went out and checked some of the corn yesterday, and you know the old adage of knee high by the 4th of July. Well, this is nipple high, so It's doing pretty good. It looks pretty dark green, and definitely could use some more heat though. It's it's going to be a probably take off here in the next week once we get to the end of the 90s. So
Do you have a rough estimate of what's like an average corn yield in your neighborhood? I mean, we all have that, what we aspire to, what it might get to be. Is there something that comes to mind when you guys talk about your corn crop down in that part of the world? Because I guess I kind of want to compare what your day length is to ours and then what we might be seeing for yield as we go through the season.
yeah, so last year with the drought, um, my corn did about 100, beans did low 20s.
Okay.
Average corn yield here, you can look at probably 160 to 180, just depends on the piece of dirt. Irrigated, you can get probably 250 to 275.
Man, Justin really thinks we're going to get to 225 on our corn and that's not irrigating it. What do you think my odds are?
Yeah, you're gonna need a lot more heat units. I think you're running out of time on that. So um,
Well,
it's gonna be a interesting year as always. Every year is.
so, okay, I just heard a conversation this morning over breakfast in regards to a hay crop. And up here, we're seeing that our hay crop looks pretty good. What about you guys? Do you feel like your K's moving along pretty nicely? And I think it's fun to compare, my world growing up in South Central North Dakota. We always knew we could probably get two cuttings. The third was like a bonus cut on alfalfa. What does that look like for you guys? Do you average getting three cuttings?
Um, we usually get three cuttings, no problem. Some guys that are in the hay business, they get five.
What?
The second cutting, yeah. I mean, they'll start cutting middle of May, just so they can go every 21, 28 days. So then I just got second cutting knocked down the other day, and it's not as good as I thought it would be with the moisture we did have. But it's a little bit older piece of alfalfa too, to where it probably has some lag on it. And I didn't get anything fertilized last fall, so I'm sure that has a detriment on it as well.
Okay. So really this year, as far as that hay crop looks, we're feeling pretty good about it. I think in a lot of places, which for those who are curious, after we got done with those Texas wildfires and back in February, though that's an area that is still going to be looking for hay. So if you're concerned that you maybe have excess hay and you want to sell, just remember to reach out to Farm Rescue. They also are making sure that Operation Hay Lift takes place from this region to move hay further south to some of those ranchers who are waiting for their pastures to refurbish, or they're going to be short a hay crop as we get towards fall as well. So we're trying to keep things kind of balanced. Um,
Yeah, and
all
definitely
right.
with some of the guys in South Dakota, or even Iowa, that have with the flood.
Oh, so you're saying like they're not going to be able to cut as much, or that some of their hay crop or their hay feed stuffs overall got damaged in the floodwaters?
Yeah, between the bales or even the fields, I'm sure not going to be producing. So
Okay. Cows need hay, no matter what anybody else says. That's kind of a part of what they need every day. So, hay, straw, grass, whatever it might be, we got to keep up with these things. I get it. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on in the headlines these days. One of them, and actually, you and I shared this headline earlier this morning. Okay, this is a good insight into a conversation we had with one of our guests last week. That was Dr. Emily Fox. She's with the Ashley Veterinary Clinic. And Emily brought up that a situation that happens with bulls that I didn't even realize would exist, and that's something called trick. And if I'm not mistaken, trick is actually a sexually transmitted disease in beef herds. So, all right, Red, what do you know about trick from any personal things that have happened in your herd before we dive into what's going on with this other herd here in South Dakota?
I pretty much have a closed herd, so I've never had an issue with trichomycin. But um, it's definitely more prevalent. It seems, it's hit or miss some years, but with all the trading of cattle, I mean, not to say that that isn't the main issue, but um, between that and yonis, it's definitely something to look out for and be proficient.
Okay, hold on. You said a closed herd. So explain what you mean by closed herd for those who are listening and don't know.
So closed herd means majority of the time I raise my own heifers to where I will keep them throughout their cycle of their years. So let's say 12 years of a beef
Okay.
cow. So within that, I won't bring in any other animals from, say, a sale barn or even my neighbor's herd or things to that, just to keep diseases and everything out of my herd.
Okay. So now let's go back to trick. And as a disease found in animals, and this is specifically looking at the beef, this is a parasite that is transmitted between the cows and the bulls during breeding. If I don't recall what Dr. Emily said as to how that parasite starts out with the bulls. Do you have any experience in that as a guy who's raised cattle before, Red? Any idea where that parasite would come from that could infest those bulls?
So the parasite actually comes from the cow, and
Okay.
um, then when the bull inseminates a cow, it picks it up, and then it can transfer to other cows, or in some instances, I mean, it could possibly transfer to other bulls if it's a issue. So
Okay, so literally,
very
as
rare.
as that bull's trying to breed those heifers, and then if another bull tries to breed the heifer, that's how we're passing this around within that herd, correct?
Right.
Do you normally test for trick in a herd, especially if you buy a new bull, or is that just common knowledge that you find out the hard way?
Um, not usually. You don't test. I mean,
Okay.
unless you're getting a new bull that hasn't been tested or have had an issue in the past. I mean, it's all discretionary towards what what your reasoning is, or what your definition of why you would want to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got more headlines that we want to visit about. Certainly plenty of other topics that are going on in ag, and we won't forget to touch on the weather throughout this hour. But right now, we're going to touch with ABC News. When we come back, we'll gather more information and keep talking. So, welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Fireworks Hangover Friday. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thank you for joining us here on Weather and Ag today on a finally Friday, but it's the post fireworks hangover celebration for all of you who've been having a grand old time blowing things up. Just like the day we had the Red River Bomb Squad as part of our show today, we're going to talk about all fun things that it might make you want to just excited and celebrate for the rest of the weekend. Now, if you have questions or comments and you want to join in, you can certainly call 701-293-9000. And I'm watching my email for you. You can send me messages there, ag@flagfamily.com. Now, we did want to make sure, as always, to say a great big thank you to our sponsors who are part of our Here We Grow project. Two of those sponsors are Pivot Bio. Pivot Bio, it has a product that we're going to be using in field to try to bring more nitrogen to our corn crop. So without adding additional fertilizer, we want to supplement that so that the corn has the nitrogen when it needs it most, rather than waiting for an encapsulation to break down or anything along those lines. Also, a big thank you to Foltz Buildings. Foltz has been a name brand recognition in the area for a long time. If you are looking to do a new building project, you want to check them out at foltzbuildings.com. Why would you choose them? Well, they're going to take your vision with their expertise and build something exceptional. So Foltz Buildings is here for you. They do focus on doing a lot of farm equipment, whether it's cold storage, machinery sheds, they're building shops, and so many more things. Check them out for Foltz Buildings out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. All right, lots of things going on in the wide world of agriculture today. But I always think that it's important to cover what we've got as big headlines today. So, all right, Red, I sent you a list of headlines that are going on for a Friday. What do you think? Which one do you want to start with today?
Well, I don't have that in front of me right now, and I'm drawing a blank.
That's okay. Here I am calling on you. It's like the teacher calling on the kid in the back who's been messing around and wasn't paying
Yeah,
enough attention. So here
yeah,
we
I was the
go.
one sleeping in the back.
All right. So are you a excuse me, are you a fan of sushi or Chinese food?
I can eat both. Yeah, I don't mind them. I'm a little more into
Okay.
sushi than I am Chinese.
All right. Here's why I ask. Sushi is ubiquitous with either one of those foods. Folks are like, I'm adding that to my stir fry, or I'm certainly putting it on a little bowl to dip my sushi into. Well, Kikkoman, who happens to be the world's leading producer of traditionally brewed soy sauce, is expanding their production in, drumroll please, Wisconsin. Now, for those of you who may not realize, and I didn't, that there is a new site that's being expanded. They're going to produce soy sauce and soy related seasonings, including teriyaki sauce, and they're planning on starting to ship in 2026. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I think about soybeans, I do not think about Wisconsin. So, Red, have you been in Wisconsin lately? Do you see a lot of soybean crop over there? And did this surprise you?
I have not been to Wisconsin for 20 years since I was in the military. We did a um, inspection over there for my air base, and so no, I can't say that I have.
So this is one that maybe caught us a little bit off guard. But nonetheless, it's, this soybeans, this is part of our production of where that crop goes to. Again, most people wouldn't think that a component of a Japanese owned company that we use on Chinese as well as Japanese food is produced in Wisconsin. So that maybe caught you for a fun fact today that maybe you weren't. Oh, well, that's a good thing. We like to see if we keep people on their toes. And additionally,
Yeah, very
um,
interesting.
okay, so if you want to be on your toes, imagine this. SpaceX lost some stuff in a field in Saskatchewan. So the folks at SpaceX sent out a couple of guys in a moving truck out to a field close to Regina, Saskatchewan to retrieve cosmic junk. What they said was very little. In fact, SpaceX is famous for not reporting to journalists or sharing a lot of answers to questions. They declined to say why those fragments had failed to burn up before they slammed into the ground and what those spacecraft pieces were a part of. It's just known that they were probably linked to a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft that returned to Earth with 4 passengers from the International Space Station back in February. This leads to the question, what's the weirdest thing you found in any of your fields, Red? And I bet it wasn't part of a SpaceX craft.
No, probably old, old farm machinery. Um, of course, arrowheads and skulls and things like that, but nothing to that extreme. And those guys that had to go retrieve that, I'm surprised they didn't get shot or anything. So it's a good thing.
They prob they probably gave a little notice that they were coming because I think in the
That's
middle of
probably,
Saskatchewan, yeah, probably a good idea. Might want to let them know. But I know it's pretty wild that people are concerned that the fact that they didn't just burn up before they hit entry time. Oh,
yeah.
speaking of burning up, a bit of a last minute headline here that came in this morning. There's a train derailment close to Carrington, North Dakota. Now, I have not gotten anything as far as a news brief, and I have not driven out there to go check on this fire myself. It looks to be about 30 cars, as reported by a neighboring farmer. There's talk that there could have some oil, some ammonium sulfate on it, which is not ammonium nitrate. It's not the explosive, it's a fertilizer, but also potentially some anhydrous ammonia. Folks realize that it's windy outside today. That stuff's going to move. It's not going to be a problem. We don't have a lot of details yet, and I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate to as the cause, and I'm not calling about whose railroad it is and starting to point the finger. But I am going to ask you, Red, have you ever worked with anhydrous ammonia or any of that type of product, just out of curiosity as a farmer?
I have not. I can remember when I was younger that, you know, it was readily available, but my dad never used it to my knowledge and never really been around it. So, um, I know there is precautions and everything that you need to take care of when handling it, but
Oh, yeah. But it's a gas form of nitrogen. Well, oftentimes we'd use like a dry urea, or we could even use a liquid like a 28 or a 32% nitrogen down in the field. But this is the gas formulation of it. We don't see nearly as much used in eastern North Dakota anymore after we've had so many higher regulations with NH4. And so, oh, excuse me, NH4, another name for anhydrous ammonia. And so, just we don't see quite as much over here, but you are right. You got to make sure that you have plenty of personal protective equipment on when you're handling that product or working around it. I remember being a young rep in the industry and being in a farmer's yard, and he cracked the valve on one of those ammonia tanks on a winter day. It was a long story. I won't even explain why that was going on, but it was not about making meth. Let me just tell you that. And that little puff of ammonia drifted through his yard, and I got a fairly good whiff of it. I think you would have crawled over your own parents to get away from that intensity because it adheres to your soft tissues like your eyes, your lungs. It was a lot. And I remember getting in my pickup and calling my dad and just saying, "What's going to happen?" And my dad, ever the helpful man, said, "Well, you're probably going to die." I'm what? He says, "No, I'm kidding. You'll be fine." So you didn't get enough of it to get hurt. You'll be okay. So there we go. The day the day that Bridget didn't die. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate all that help. So, all
well,
right.
he was just
It
trying
is
to keep light of
1:31.
it.
He really was. He was. Okay, it is 1:31 in the afternoon, bottom of the hour. We've got news to follow up on, and then we'll be back with more headlines and weather. Don't go away. Well, actually, it's a whole different crew today. Bridgette Readel is here as your ag director, but I am joined by our sound engineer, Addison, who's doing a fabulous job for me because I'm remote. Thank you to Albright Farms of Wimbledon, North Dakota, for allowing me to use their space today. And then additionally, I am joined by a guest co host out of South Dakota. That's Red Ranger from the Southeast South Dakota region. And we have been just rolling through the headlines, things that have been going on. And I want to say a big thank you to those who are watching us via our live stream. That's on Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV. You can see every so often I keep drinking out of this bright green cup that says Affiance fungicide. This is from one of our sponsors, Gowan and Company. Gowan USA provided us with Affiance fungicide to be able to put that on our corn this year to prevent any problems that we might see after so much moisture in our corn crop. So thank you to Marcia Van Leer at Gowan USA for making sure that I am properly outfitted for the holiday season and really for the whole summer with my new Affiance cup. So thanks, Marcia. Real shout out to you. So, Red, we've been talking through some of the headlines that are hitting us in the news these days. And one that I chose to talk about today with you is changing climate and its impact on farmer mental health. But I don't think it's just the climate. As a producer yourself, give me a little background, some of the things that affect you. And as much as I hate the phrase keep you up at night, what are those items?
There's a, well, majority, I should say majority, the lot of different instances where, different things that you need to concern yourself and be upfront and also um, try to be prolific and, um, like spraying, getting the right chemical there on the right time or fungicide or anything like that. It's always a challenging thing. And more and more, it's finally being brought into the spotlight to where this is an issue for a lot of farmers and ranchers, and they need to take it seriously. There's enough. There isn't. I shouldn't say enough, but there's too many suicides the way it is because we don't need to be on top of that list.
Absolutely. And I know when you look at the statistics, farmers and ranchers are twice as likely to die by suicide than their urban counterparts. Additionally, as high as the stress levels are with our farmers and ranchers, it's double what's going on in most of their urban areas when it comes to stress, anxiety, etc. But we have the least amount of resources because I know that feeling of I need to get to a doctor's office, but I don't want to take the time away from my operation to have to drive an
Yeah.
hour one way in order to get help. Do you, as you said, it's kind of coming a little bit more into the spotlight for folks. Do you feel like you're seeing more folks around you that are willing to ask for help and find that right thing that works for them?
Um, Not so much around me because there's a lot of Dutchmen, so they're pretty hard headed. But the uh, the other side of that, um, it's just mainly networking with your neighbors and talking through things is probably the biggest advocate, I guess, around here. Um, yeah, we don't have time. I mean, we're not going to waste half a day driving to Sioux Falls or driving even to Yankton, which is 30 miles away. That you need to spend an hour there and waste half a day. We don't think of those things as being an asset, I guess, to getting further ahead in life.
So, in this particular article, it talks about climate change impacting the mental health of farmers. And in this survey, it mentions that the young people, the 16 to 25-year-old age group in a multitude of countries, so not just the United States, they feel that climate change is more of a concern and drives their anxiety and their depression. So, as a guy in his 40s who's been farming for a fifth generation, what is that? Do you think it impacts you as much or in a different way than some of those younger farmers that are just getting started?
I would say less for myself because we're a little more accustomed to it. We know that the weather changes. I can, remember when I was starting out younger after my dad passed away that it, I don't know, you go through half a 30 pack just to get get yourself acclimated to go through the next day because I mean that was the way you coped. And
Hmm.
now that times are different, and sobriety and things like that are getting to be more prevalent. It definitely takes a different coping mechanism to get yourself through some of those hardships that a lot of people don't realize or they don't actually take the time to um, go through it instead of trying to sidetrack it.
You make a great point. We are in a culture here in the Dakotas and the upper Midwestern plains where we use alcohol as a coping mechanism. And that's talked about a lot when you're in training or in discussions when it comes to mental health and stress and helping others get through that. And it's not easy to say, I don't want to use um, alcohol or or the drugs to lessen the effects of what's happening on my farm. And I think that's a big step for a lot of people. It's probably one of the hardest ones they have to make.
Yeah, definitely. And it is an addiction and it is a crutch to where, you know, I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, but most people they maybe rely on it too much and it's sometimes detrimental or else a disease or something that can really affect their family. And that's a problem.
Man, I can pile on, unfortunately, so many statistics because realistically, the Midwestern states where we live has a higher percentage of folks that join the armed forces in some way, shape, or form. And you couple that with the stress of going back into farming or trying to start farming after you get out of the military, coupled with that drinking culture that goes on in agriculture. And it's a rough road to hoe, I guess I might say. And if you have any background or insight you want to add to that, Ranger, you are certainly welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest, one of the biggest parts of when I was um, in the military that, that's what you did. I mean, not to say we didn't do other things, but I mean, that was our social gathering. And I think it is for a lot of people. And um, to be on the other side of that now, it's definitely taking some different ways of communication, socialization, and um, you know, different aspects of ways to be in a social gathering.
One of the things that I heard you mention too was that reaching out to others, being a resource for your neighbors, and well, they can be one for you too. And I think that one of the most important lessons I've learned as I've come to spend more time talking about rural mental health and dealing with farmers and trying to help their stress and anxiety levels is that sometimes it's as simple as going over and talking to them while you're hanging off the fence or riding in the buddy seat of the tractor. That's probably as good a therapy in some cases as you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. And I just had that with my neighbor for my fence that washed out. He dug it out of his creek, and we talked for maybe an hour. And he's a mid 60s bachelor that had to sell his cows last year because he has back issues, and he's worked hard all his life. And um, honestly, he doesn't have anybody to talk to. I mean, he's got his sisters and his brother, but his brother drinks heavily, and I'm sure he doesn't get a lot of reprieve from that. So
Man, and it's We started out talking a little bit about climate control, but then, or excuse climate control, changing climate. Then there's the prices, the current weather systems that we're having, family dynamics, because especially if you look at farms that are intertwined with multi generations, I can see why there's so many things that happen in a day that maybe it makes your head spin just a little bit.
Yeah, and trying to keep that all organized in your mind because a lot of farmers are not the best at, keeping that organized or writing down or even in a computer. I know it's gotten a lot better, but you still have to have that mental poignancy to where you can make it a decision at that time instead of having to go through your notes or go through something else. So it definitely is a challenge.
Every day is a new day and a new challenge when you're working in ag. Now, folks, I know you want to know what the weather sounds like out there as well, so don't you be going anywhere. We're going to touch on the weather when Red Ranger and I come back. Plus, it is National Ice Cream Month, and we have plenty of listener follow-up questions that we have to hit on today as well. And I do want to make sure that just so I don't
Yay,
forget,
ice cream.
I want to say thank you to having Yay Ice Cream and yay for having a guest co-host today who stepped in to help out on this Friday fireworks hangover. We will be right back. And thank you for joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus. It's a bit of a misfit crew today, but it's going really well. You're joined by myself, Bridgette Readel, Ag Director, Addison, our sound engineer, and of course, my guest co-host, Red Ranger out of South Dakota, is joining me today. But it's not just all about ag today. We want to talk the weather. So we're going to give you the weather update starting right now.
Well, this afternoon we have an isolated thunder shower as possible later this afternoon and this evening. Otherwise, there will be partly cloudy to partly sunny with west-northwest winds between 5 to 15 miles an hour. Weekend will contain widespread scattered hit-or-miss showers. Thunder showers will be more clouds than sun through the afternoon. If you can dodge the showers, the days look good and fairly nice. Next week, we start off with more of the same scattered and isolated shower chances.
Here we go. The weather's going to look good. Next week, we're getting into the 80s. Ladies and gentlemen, it feels like summer. And that's what July often brings us. July also brings us the National Ice Cream Month. And as you said earlier, Red, yay for ice cream. So, all right, what's your favorite one?
um, I'd probably have to say maple nut was my favorite Swan's ice cream
Oh,
back in the day.
Schwann's
But
made great maple nut ice cream. Yes, you're right there. But please.
and cherry nut. I forgot about the cherry nut.
Okay, so that's just like the ice cream in the pails. Now, if you're going to talk brands, Schwann's, I cannot believe you didn't bring up SDSU ice cream because I think there's some sort of state law that if you live in South Dakota, you have to talk about SDSU's ice cream everywhere you go.
Yeah, it should be nationwide. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's like the champion of
Now,
ice cream.
personally, big fan of Pride Dairy here right out of North Dakota, and I happen to have a bucket of Juneberry in my freezer, and I'm planning on um, basically planning on eating all of that as time allows. I'm not afraid of it.
I will have to look into that.
So,
I'll have to get some.
June berries are great. June berries remind me kind of like a blueberry, but maybe a little bit more tart. So, to be honest, the ice cream is about the color of the shirt I'm wearing, if that gives you any indication what you're going to be eating for the day. So, June berry ice cream, folks, look it up. Now, I do have a listener question that came in, and that was from one of our folks who listens very regularly, sends me great questions, and I always really appreciate them. I'm going to go back to pull that email up. And since we're getting into the fair season, and that's going to be hitting us hard next week, is the Clay County Fair in Barnesville, Minnesota, wondering the clarification between 4-H and FFA functions. So let me start by asking my co-host, Red Ranger, were you a 4-H or an FFA kid?
I was in FFA. Did a little bit of livestock judging and dairy foods. As far as competitions, um, 4-H I never really got into. I raised sheep in high school, and um, I don't know, being an only child doing the work on the farm, I didn't really get the interest or take the time to get involved in 4-H. So
Well, like yourself, I didn't get a lot of chance to be in 4-H, but now, of course, there's Clover Buds, which starts little bitty kids at the in the kindergarten level, kindergarten, first grade, all the way up till those kids are in that 18-year-old range. For FFA, we talk about kids being freshmen, and actually now they can start as seventh graders in high school all the way through their year of 21 when they can do some competitions as far as their state FFA and their American FFA degrees. What's kind of the difference between the two? 4-H comes through the extension service at land-grant universities. There's a lot of federal funding that goes into 4-H program, and I know that there have been some philanthropy projects like Jeff Bezos, his ex-wife donated a pile of money to 4-H to try to improve some of their programs that they're doing in urban areas as well for students. FFA is a
awesome.
three-legged stool where you have students who are in the ag classrooms. Then they have their supervised ag experience program. So like you mentioned, raising sheep, cattle, off-farm placement, something like that. And then also there's their FFA chapter where, just like you mentioned, Red Ranger, you can compete in all sorts of contests. I'm sure you'll be stunned to know some of mine were speaking contests. Yak, yak, yak. So kids kids who are in 4-H or FFA, they can participate at their local fairs. They are showing some of their projects that they've done throughout the year. Maybe it's their livestock exhibits, might be static exhibits. I've seen 4-H kids do with Legos or some of their cooking skills. There's even gardening. There's a whole variety of things that happen, but they come at the aspect of kids a little bit different way. 4-H starts them younger, FFA is a little older, and then there's the difference between coming through the extension service, whether it's through the or else through the public schools like FFA does. So I'm looking forward to seeing lots of FFA kids. I will actually be live next Friday at the Clay County Fair in Barnesville, sharing the good word of what's going on in that fair. Well, that wraps
Awesome.
up our day today. Thanks for being my guest host today, Red Ranger. So much appreciate it.
You are welcome. I don't have a screaming goat, but I can give you a moo for Cooper, the mascot.
I
Moo.
appreciate that very much. Moo. All right. For all of you who are listening, stay tuned for the Best of Jay Thomas show is coming up next.